Good evening, everyone. It's going to be a different kind of stream. I never tried this out before, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how things go down. This sort of stream will probably not have very many numbers at first. That's going to be something that's built over the course of time. And I know some people are just going to stare at me and say, why are you not applying like the podcast or just chatting tag? I still think that I'd rather just keep the in-group of people that are already here rather than invite trouble. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. Let's pan over to the camera. There I am. Here we are. Welcome. This is super bare bones. I'll give it more detail on the next episode, which I'm actually going to call episode 1. This is just the intro / debut, episode. It's the Glass Podcast, because as soon as you become washed up in one video game, you usually wind up doing what every other white guy in his late 20s and early 30s does, and decide to create a podcast, because, of course, that's always been the natural progression of things, and I don't really have anything planned. It's going to be like a whole stream of consciousness sort of thing today. I'll run over what I kind of think I'll be doing for each of these episodes. As a guy who used to play Mario Kart 64, giving back to my community is going to be very difficult because I basically don't have the heart to play nowadays, if ever. So, in order for me to give back, I kind of have to give back by not playing and doing things that involve people around me. Like a lot of things in this world, it starts to become like the story of you is more or less the story of people that are not you, which are the people that are surrounding you. So that's kind of my aim with things. And I gave a very rough summary of how this was going to start off. I think you can guess by what type of podcast it is. Mario Kart 64 will always be the opening topic. That'll be the thing that I begin with. There's not going to be much of anything else for that first 30 or so minutes. And then the next 30 to 60 minutes or however long I decide to do each one of these podcast episodes, I'll have other topics in hand. With Mario Kart 64, it'll probably be as much as I can, a wide spread of whatever things I can cover, if it's multiplayer, time trials, speedruns, upcoming events. We'll cover that sort of thing in the podcast. In this particular podcast, there's not going to be much to say. There will. We'll cover a few things today. After running through the whole Mario Kart 64 portion of the podcast, we'll have other things. Other games I speedrun. Other things that I'm interested in that might be super obscure. Giving the green light to people that are much more obscure or a little bit further out of the way, that would not get that exposure otherwise, who I think deserve to be showcased. Aside from games, I'll probably be covering music on the podcast as well. I'll probably cover a little bit of sports, depending on what I'm feeling. And then just a billion miscellaneous topics as well. There's really no structure to this first episode, as I said before. My goal was to construct a bunch of things and just work on branching it out, but I don't have any of that as of right now, and I'll get to why I don't. It's something I'll be working on. It's just not there yet. I will unveil more. Believe me when I say that. I'm going to grab my headphones in case I decide to do a portion that could warrant absolutely no one from showing up, or who knows. Or I might try to simulate old XM radio where they would do call-in portions. That was also true of like radio talk shows, and to an extent still kind of is. Yeah, we're going to be going that route, and potentially in future Glass podcast episodes, I might have specific like special guests. We'll get to that event horizon when we do. I don't think it's gonna be my first priority, but you know, we gotta start by cracking an egg open, and we'll go from there. I'm not gonna say too much today because there's not much to cover today. It's just kind of a very standard start of the year sort of thing. Cover a few just a few small things. I guess the big thing we can cover on the Mario Kart 64 side of things is that the community is getting to its voting season for Player of the Year. I am going to use this as a reminder for those of you who do not use your Discord or don't have Discord and just so happen to be here, which I don't think is hardly anybody. But this is just more or less a reminder to people within the top 300 on the non-shortcut leaderboards. If you want to vote, you've got a week. You've got 1 week to get your votes in. That's all. You've got only 1 week to get your votes in for Player of the Year. There are certainly a million ways that you could go about this, but there is a sort of preferred voting order list that goes from like first preference to fifth, and that's what's being done for this cycle. The players that have been chosen as Player of the Year nominees by the community, somewhat similar to the list that I have, can be found in the meta channel of the Mario Kart 64 Discord server. With nominees, of course, it's Arya, Gray, Master JCP, MVA, Rekman, MF, CMEC, and Travis. Those are the 8 folks that have been selected. Not to play some bias, my general selection process is to pick somebody whose accomplishments between the combined likes of non-shortcut and shortcut feel worthy of bestowing the award to you. So I do not always align with the community in that regard, but that's been my way of doing things in the past. It's not always the way that I run the show. I will have like a few exceptions here and there, but that's what I do for the community vote most of the time. However, when I do it based on my own personal criteria, I split the award into 3 pieces. This is what I'm talking about from here on forward. It's not like community sanctioned stuff. The community sanctioned stuff is just the best of the community choice of the 8. This is now we're going to my personal criteria. If we're not being hindered by community standards or stuff like that, when I do my own like end of the year dossier, which I'm working piece by piece on. I've been having a lot of writer's block. Made it very difficult for me to write anything up, and I have to Wayback Machine to see whose ranks were what in January 1st because I failed to capture it the day of. I was a little too busy getting home and trying to get my work cycle back into balance. What I do is I split it into 3 categories. I have combined for people's efforts in both non-shortcut and shortcut, and then I have individual separations between shortcut and non-shortcut. So that's kind of my personal style. You can disagree with me. That's fine. I am a flawed human being. It's not necessarily like my way or the highway. There's a lot of nuances to how you could make your decision for these awards, and there's no perfect way to do it. So if you feel strongly about your opinion and you're involved, get your vote in. You got a week to go. There will be a winner formally announced on probably like February 1st in the evening or the day following. However many days it takes for them to tally the votes. I don't know. It's a mystery to me because, well, everything that management does up top is a mystery. I make a lot of assumptions, and sometimes I'm wrong about those assumptions, and then it's just kind of like, well, who looks like an idiot? And then it's just me who looks like the idiot. But not to provide bias, but if you're like having a hard time deciding, to me, there is like a 3-person race between Ari, JC, and MF right now as like the 3 people that I think like stand the best chance of like becoming player of the year this year. I see it that way, and I'm not going to say who I would personally pick, but I can tell you that those are the 3 that I can think of who are the closest together. That's not to dismiss the possibility that somebody else could steal it from out of left field. We never know. There is one thing to consider, is that there are going to be biases when the awards come in. There's my own personal bias. There could be like a state bias for the people who are loyal to the state of Wisconsin. There could be a nationality bias. There could be a bias towards non-shortcut. There could be a recency bias where the people who vote might be thinking about certain players' accomplishments, especially later in the year compared to an earlier set of accomplishments. So we cannot say with certainty who is actually going to be outright picked, but again, that's kind of where we're at. Like I said before, get your votes in. Do not waste your time on that, because there's really only about like seven or so, like 6.5 days tops. So yeah, you'll want to get that in. And as compared to my own like non-sanctioned awards that I'll be doing a ceremony for sometime in March, I got about 3 of the picks right. Obviously, certain things were more based on my merits for combined are based on like both non-shortcut and shortcut, and so what you'll notice is that there are certain players that are going to be much more heavily favored over others within the community. I don't want to say that this is like always true, but there is a non-shortcut bias in our community. That has always been true. That will always be true. It'll never stop being true. I can tell you that with certainty after all the years of just kind of that crazy little shortcut revolution that was going on. So again, I got 3 of the 4 right. I was correct about Ari, JC, and Morris. And I had sort of been giving a lot of credence to other players who are probably not going to be included, just so it doesn't seem like constant repetition. And some people might say being the champ and doing champ moves should still be considered. And I would have, when I put like Dan in my selection for like combined, it was not necessarily like, it was not the usual, is because he actually had both like shortcut and non-shortcut stuff. That was just like nothing but world records across the board. So that was one of my reasonings. He's not on the community's nominations list. The same goes for Frank Calvin, FC. You might see him here or there. I don't think people were going to add him to the nominations list, but I was going to recognize his accomplishments as like for a mostly debut year, in both shortcut and non-shortcut there too. Jaden Lee has already had his chance at the Sun, but I still give him nods because he's one of the most consistent players of all time, and I don't think people should continue to give him his flowers. I mean, that's just kind of where I come from. because he has gone for, I think, about a decade or so and still continues to get personal best times and at a top 10 level every year for like countless upon countless years. He hasn't stopped on being that consistent, and that is no small feat in the slightest. Few players are capable of pulling that off. It's so often that like somebody who has like a player of the year nomination performance or like a player of the year winning performance, they eventually kind of just like fizzle out the following 2 to 3 years. That's what I personally noticed. So that's kind of it's why somebody like Jaden it's always been very impressive. And so yeah, I got 1/3 of the nominees predicted correctly, and then everything else was straight up wrong on my own personal list. It did not align with the community picks. Calvin, Dan, and Jaden were not there. That's fine. That's no big deal. My personal award ceremony will be in March. Maybe I can like get permission from Brody to host it in a small corner of like the PA cart meet venue. I think that would be fun. We'll see what he thinks. I don't know. Brody, he's not here. I'm sure he's busy or doing other things. I might throw that information at him and see. He just might be like, it's my event. I should do it elsewhere, and we'll figure that out later. Maybe I'll just do it like in a hotel bedroom. I don't know. I think it'd just be funnier I think it'd be more fun for the people if they could actually view it in person. You know, the participation and that and whatnot. Maybe I can put up a worse performance than Jimmy Kimmel. That could... We're going to go off on a tangent already. That does lead to a topic. No. We'll save it for later. We'll save it for later in the podcast, the intro episode. We'll get to the Academy Awards nominations, because I was going to talk about those. At some point. What else is there to say? There was at least one new top 100 player in non-shortcut. Matt Lidelli, also known as Reckman, or Reckman, I say Reck, but to me the H is silent. Other people might say it's not. Nonetheless, Matt is the newest member in the top 100, so good stuff to him. Made it in, and then just casually decided to hit an MR fast lap, got time, so that's neat. And maybe just a little bit terrifying for people who are still actively playing a handful of ranks above him. There may be just some people who just don't care like that. It's interesting to see like the mindsets in time trials. There are just some people who are like, they could care less where they are from one side or like across the other when they go up the leaderboards. They're more or less just doing it for themselves, and the people that pass or like don't pass them, that doesn't really affect them mentally, or they just kind of like have very gradual fence posts that they aim for each week. Because as somebody from the extreme side as myself, I was always just like, you live or die by that. You live or die by the rank sometimes, where it's like, well, if you're not increasing your rank, and that can be unhealthy, and has been unhealthy in the past. And so, if people like that healthy like competition, then it can be good if you're like constantly moving. It also depends. If that makes you anxious, then you may just more or less focus on yourself instead. It's really it's usually a user preference sort of thing, and the same goes for any general speedrunning. from my perspective, it's always been I've excelled a lot better when it's just me versus myself rather than me versus others. Me versus others is where, I start to get a little bit too much heat. You just never know exactly how you're going to react in that way. I don't have too much else to say on the time trials end of things. I guess Matthew Little is like one time away from becoming a non-shortcut god, so that's on watch. Could happen any day, could happen at any point this year. Just has to put it together at the right point in time. We'll see exactly when that takes place. No counting on that though. That's neither here or there at the moment. But we'll get to it, and that to be determined later. There really isn't anybody else who's of worth note. I mean, yet. We may take more careful notes in later podcast episodes where I have more information, maybe not just on like present stuff, but like historical stuff, past karting events or past karting history, because that would be interesting to me at least. And I know that it just kind of would be very, very, very interesting. I'll be a little bit more livelier on the next couple of episodes. There are a few more other things to mention in Mario Kart 64. There's less than a month remaining. The deadline of PA Kart Meet is on February 20th, I believe it is. So that's quickly coming up for the folks who are interested or thinking about participating in that Mario Kart 64 event. There are a few requirements. I believe joining the server is definitely one of them. Brody does require that. He also requires that you finish a full time trials timesheet for the site. I don't agree with that, but it is something that you will want to do if you want to be there. So that'll be, if you're participating in the tournament, I believe. If you're not participating, I think you can show up without, but that'll be something to confirm with him. If you're just there to have fun and not playing the tournament, that you'll need the timesheet. If you won't need the timesheet. If you want to participate in the 4-player versus tournament, you'll need it filled out and submitted with proof, because he's very stingy about that stuff. It's kind of interesting. It's a very interesting approach that he takes, because I know kind of my philosophy compared to Brody's philosophy. He's very much always seen it as like an opportunity for it to be a close, like tightly knit, but still like highly fun sort of community tournament event. For me, I have always believed that the Mario Kart 64 community is capable of something like way bigger, which is why I don't require the timesheet whatsoever for participation in tournaments. And I also believe it would be important for like combined Mario Kart communities to like band together, combine events, and do something, not that I'm trying to suggest we go into like the big business, but I was raised on the esports mentality of past, which is starting to fizzle away too, actually. But I still think it's like you want to keep new participants like pouring into the community. You want to be able to cater to a wider audience and continue to do that. I think it's important for the community to not like just die out and be exclusive. I don't have this sort of like, I don't have like a gatekeeping approach. There's actually like a lot of things that if I've learned anything is that it's important not to gatekeep, which I guess is a part of why the Wisco Card Invite series is being canned ultimately. There's not going to be a formal announcement about it. It's just going away. That's all there is. Obviously, people can still put their own events together. It doesn't have to have the name applied to it, with their friends in person. Oftentimes, that's been the explanation for Summer Card Invite. To me, it's like we can turn it into a Smash Summit of sorts or a Card Summit of sorts, and it's to me, it's always been like make it more of a card summit of sorts, and you can still like moderate who goes in and who doesn't go in. But I want the card community to be something bigger. I've always believed that in that possibility of it being bigger. And was in with a resub. Going on 8 months. That's impressive. That's a lot of time to be a sub to me. Anybody who has been here longer than a month, you've got nothing but my admiration, because, I mean, you could be using that money to pay for other things, and you are supporting me and my pocket change, which I use to either get a cup of coffee or buy some nice food at a restaurant, or pay for gasoline or pay for whatever I need to pay for in a pinch. So it goes without saying that it's well appreciated. Again, like I said before, there's going to be another Wisco event that is replacing Wisco Card Invite. We'll unveil more details about it later once I get like a for sure signal from the person I'm in conversations with. He asked me some details a while back, and I'm just going to have to kind of just nudge him and be like, oh yeah, just a reminder, we talked about this, and I'd also like to see if we could put this out a few other times in the year as well. So, yeah, more details on that later. I want to make a formal announcement within the server. It's going to be one of those events where there's no invite-onlys. Anybody can show up once we get that together. There's no fees. It's going to be free to enter. And there's going to be really no stakes with that tournament. Again, more details later. Just kind of keeping it surface level. And Pierre Carmade, of course. March 8th through the 9th. It's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. More details in the actual card server. You can find it in the events general channel. The server invite is there. Is there anything else to say about Mario Kart 64? And I think the answer is no, but I'll probably think of it later. Aside from working on the dossier, I had writer's block for like 3-4 months. So I started it early, but then I just kind of crashed out between October and December, and I just needed to focus on myself. I'm very organized this year so far. Fingers crossed it stays that way. And the podcast quality might be indicative of how focused I am in the year. It's very possible that the quality just like takes a nosedive. My expectation is just it'll gradually move up. I have to wave my arms in one or the other direction because I forget how like the mirroring takes place. So I'll need to make sure to bear that in mind. So that way, that way is, so that is down, and that is, I cannot do our motions in the camera. Remind me, folks, never to do that. It's not necessary. Let's get to a few other topics. I am the one and only active Frogger player in the community right now, aside from Painkiller, who recently hit a blisteringly fast a world record of 14:10 on the any percent category of Frogger 2 Swampy's Revenge, which is different from Frogger 2 for the Game Boy Color. Disclaimer: they're two completely different games. They're both Frogger 2 in name, but not the same in premise, not the same thing. Very, very different from each other. The Swampy's Revenge is the PS1, PC Dreamcast version of the game. which looks completely different and involves different worlds from Frogger 2. They were both made in the same development cycle, but they had two different studios. One studio was in charge of the PC version, which was ported to PlayStation and Dreamcast. The other studio was in charge of the Game Boy Color version. So they are different speedruns. And actually, all four consoles have different any percent categories. And well, Painkiller's got the other three world records for any percent. Well, I still hold the line for the Game Boy Color Frogger 2. In fact, Game Boy Color Frogger 2 might as well just not be called Swampy's Revenge. It really is just Frogger 2 by name only, and pretty much nothing else. I'll be working on Frogger 2 for the Game Boy Color a little bit, not really much for world record, but more or less just so that I have a submission ready to go for Midwest Speedfest, which I guess brings us into another speedrun topic. Anybody who wants to potentially meet Wisco Car Crew, if anybody else aside from me shows up, would like to watch some speedruns live, potentially be involved with other people within the video game music community and check out some of the lovely performances that are given for a variety of different genres. Like it would be orchestral, jazz, 8-bit, heavy metal. There's pretty much every genre. The video game music convention pretty much covers that full spread. So it's fun in a very different way from your usual like music conventions or your usual like music festivals, is that you're not necessarily just dealing with professionals. There's a lot of people who are at a variety of different skill levels and do not necessarily have the same level, but the passion remains the same, and you can tell everybody who's in the venue wants to be there, wants to be listening. It's not necessarily a niche crowd of people, but it's a crowd of people that have a lot of fun. This year's theme is going to be Dimensional Rift, so Midwest Speedfest is going to be slightly favoring runs that are more geared towards that like a space theme, which probably means I'll be submitting at least for Star Wars Trilogy Apprentice of the Force. We'll do that. I'll probably submit for Star Wars Trilogy Apprentice of the Force, Frogger 2 again, but only any percent this time around. Wild Animal Racing, definitely. I kind of want that one, and many people within that community already know what Wild Animal Racing is. I definitely would love to see that one make it. So that gives me at least 3, and I guess that fourth and final one is probably just going to be filled in by, I don't know, probably, let's see, it's probably going to be filled in by Jackie Chan Adventures, even though I'm going to be poorly prepared for that. That one's going to be really hard to prepare. There's really going to be no good way for me to, other than just to like maybe put in a submission run and call it a day, and we'll see how that goes. There's no like not necessarily any better chance of me making it. I would like to say my best shot goes to Wild Animal Racing, followed directly by a combination of Star Wars Trilogy and Frogger, and then Jackie Chan Adventures is just going to be a big, massive surprise if it does get accepted. Because it is just so obscure to the point where, like, I can only think of a dozen people on planet Earth who have probably played it in their childhood, like, as a kid. Specifically the Game Boy Advance version of it, so... we're going to see if we can get, like, Wisco Car Crew just to show up as, like, a social opportunity. Like, just keep it a very limited, small group of people. I'm not saying anything yet because it really all hinges on who's willing to be there. And I want to. If I go solo, that's not going to bother me. That's the thing for Midwest Speedfest. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Maybe I just don't submit for Mario not for Jackie Chan Adventures. Maybe I like throw my hat in the ring to like get a couple of people to do like a Mario Kart 64 like no skips relay. Because if all I have to do is practice the same 7 minutes of like 3 courses and nothing else, that's like It's whatever. I can do that. So, offer is on the table. That's Midwest Speedfest. There's really nothing else video games wise that I can really think of right now. So I think we're going to start by entering right into the gates of hell itself and roll right into a brief overview of sports, because Satan is working in the background. We're getting the Super Bowl that absolutely nobody wanted aside from Eagles fans and Chiefs fans, and that's it. At least the Bills-Chiefs game was close, whereas like the Eagles-Commanders game was just an embarrassment. It was one of the most embarrassing things I've seen. One of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. Because the first half looked close, and then Philadelphia straight up dunked another 33 points. It was another 30 points. It was a sad second half. A very sad second half. Yeah. And, well, as it would stand, one might be tempted to say that, like, oh, was it because, like, the refs rigged the game? Not necessarily. Because more penalties were thrown at Kansas City. I believe it was 50% or more penalties were thrown at Kansas City than were actually thrown at Buffalo. We're getting to the point where you have to... In any other instance, it would be like, oh yeah, they're getting an assist. If you're, like, wearing a tinfoil hat on your head. But at this point, there is no argument aside from Josh Allen blew it and just couldn't live down the pressure when it was the most important to do so. In the last 2 minutes that were left, and when they had the ball in their court, that's really all that there is to be said. And I have no means to really get into the Super Bowl game. And knowing what I know is I just do not like both teams like that at all. Actually, they're both. I don't care for either of them. Individual players, sure, but the only reason I have to tune into the football game for the Super Bowl is not even for the football game. I just would like to see Kendrick Lamar put on a banger of a halftime show. That's all I want. I'll watch Kendrick Lamar, and maybe if we're all lucky, he'll have Not Like Us play in front of an audience of millions. he'll be able to. That alone would make all the suffering of the postseason worth it. Him condemning Drake to the pits of hell and performing Not Like Us on the halftime show would heal all my wounds of knowing that we're going to have the most boring Super Bowl that there could possibly ever be. That's all I got to say about that, and I'm going to say 4 hours because I don't care. I'd rather work on my Midwest Speedfest submission than watch that. The story would be different if it were Bills-Eagles. I would probably watch until the Eagles start winning and really start running away with it. I have no dog in this. I really do not. Anyways, yeah, Super Bowl sucks. I'm sure the people that enjoy it are really going to enjoy it. I just don't really care enough. And we'll tune in next year. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'll probably, out of curiosity, maybe check out the NFL draft. Maybe I'm not too far away from where the NFL draft is taking place. The good old Badger State is hosting it this year. Ooh-wee. That's pretty crazy. That humble old Green Bay is going to be the host site of the NFL draft this year. What a surprise that is. It's going to be probably fun. We'll see. Maybe I don't want to deal with the crowds. I kind of want to try to, let's say, be there. In a word. We'll get to the music topic of things. Now, when I talk about music, I'm going to be talking about the music I like to listen to. Not necessarily the latest music. In fact, it's probably almost never, ever going to be the latest music that's coming out. Unless it has to do with one very particular thing. If you're a prog head, like I used to be, then you're probably looking forward to the new Dream Theater album that's coming out, I believe it's February? That's coming up in February, and you might especially be curious if you enjoyed the Mike Portnoy-led era of Dream Theater. He's returned to the band. Certainly something that a lot of people did not expect. I was sort of like, well, there were signs along the way. Most people were just like, well, you couldn't have predicted this. I'm like, kind of? I mean, he toured again with John Petrucci, so it's not impossible, but, he's here. He's here now. And the band is back to that mostly classic lineup again. After a handful of years with Mike Mangini on the drum set, the OG Mike is taking the helm. So we'll see if it takes a while for their writing to get back to what it was back in the 2000s or the late 90s, or if they're going to be going in a whole new direction. You never know. I don't think Dream Theater is the type of band to reinvent the wheel. I would not expect that from them. But I'll be interested. I'll probably give it a listen. Like every other new Dream Theater album, I've always checked it out. I've given it a fair shake. That's one of the few new releases I'm going to be talking about this year. I think the other new album release that I'll be talking about, that I can think of, it's coming up in about 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks or so. Less than 2 weeks is the new Squid album, Cowards, which I believe drops on February 7th. I really enjoyed select parts of the album Oh Monolith, and the same goes for select portions of Bright Green Field. They've got some standout songs on both of those. Songs like Narrator, Boy Racers, those were the best songs on Bright Green Field. They're fantastic. I can say the same for Swing in a Dream, Undergrowth, and The Blades. The Blades is the best song they've made so far. I've yet to listen to the lead-up singles. I usually just listen to the album in full as as the slate of its own. They've improved on every album, so we'll see if they can keep that up going into this next one. Unlike Dream Theater, Squid might be the type of band that does reinvent the wheel. They'll have something new. They'll have something new on the horizon, and you can trust it's going to have something interesting to listen to. I would like to think so, and my hopes are that they keep on getting better. Because, like every other year, I have my albums and best songs that I'll listen to in the year. I've been doing these lists since I was 11 years old. I started my first music list of best albums I listened to in the year 2007. So I've been running these for 18 years now. We're approaching 20. It's crazy. We are approaching 20. Didn't think we'd ever be there. Didn't think we'd ever get there. It's going to be happening next year or the year after. It's wild. It's truly, truly wild that we're going to be getting to that point. My 10th list was in 2016, and my 20th list will be next year. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And my music list for 2025, the albums list is got some contenders already early in the year, although I'm sure the albums list is going to get way stronger releases. Currently leading the front right now on my albums list of best stuff that I've listened to this year so far. The album Techniques of Relief, which is by Japanese artist Susumu Hirasawa, is currently leading the charge, pretty far ahead of the runner-up. It's a fantastic, very futuristic album. If you like the anime Berserk, that same guy, Susumu Hirasawa, also did the soundtrack for Berserk. So if you like that, you might want to check out this album. That's all I'm gonna say about that. It really, the only way to do it proper justice would be to listen to it yourself and form your own opinion on it. The same thing goes for another album, which it's currently at the runner-up. I'm sure it's going to be much further down the line. I don't think it's going to end the year in my top 20, but it will be it'll be close on the edge, I think, or at least top 30. The runner-up right now is the new sound. It's made by Jordy Griep. For those of you might recognize the name. Jordy Griep is or was the frontman of Black Midi. Black Midi is no longer around. They have split ways, to the surprise of everybody else. Jordy was the one to announce the band was done, and everybody else was like, what? I'm sorry, what'd you do? Very similar to how, well, maybe not exactly the same, but similar to how David Byrne announced Talking Heads is done, just said so in a newspaper, very casually, and then everybody else in the band, Talking Heads, was just like, I'm sorry, you said what? You said Talking Heads is done? And so Jordy Griep has come out with his first solo album. The new sound is excellent. There are some very strong tracks on there that have just been non-stop rollers. Holy Holy has been playing a lot in my tab. The same goes for Walk Up, which was a previously Black Midi song. And the same goes for the two songs that are kind of in a foot race with each other to see which will be selected potentially as my favorite song to listen to in 2025. And we'll get to that. There's really only two that are worth discussing right now. And those two are currently the one other song that is off the new sound by Jordy Griep. That is The Magician. It's what I should expect out of a guy like him. He is continuing to put out classics. He did it on Hellfire with Sugar Zoo. He did it on Schlegenheim with Western. He's made another perfect song with The Magician. You just kind of have to listen to it to really feel it out. But this is where it gets tough because it's hard to judge, how do you, on your own personal merits, decide which one you think is the better one? You could decide off of, a cataclysmically powerful performance by Jordy Griep on The Magician, which deals with incel topics. I'm sure that is might be interesting to some people, less so to others. Or if you pick something that's really simple, has a singular structure that runs all the way across in a very short, 2.5 minute song, By the Time I Get to Phoenix by Glenn Campbell. It's a sad song. That's all I gotta say. Which you may notice the trend of quite a few songs that make it to the top of my list being kind of depressing. It's happened in the past. It can happen again. I don't do that on purpose. It's just kind of where the vibes are drawn to for me sometimes. You can't necessarily say that every year because my two songs that tied for best song I listened to in 2024 were pretty happy songs. They weren't they were relatively joyful or the triumphant sort of polar opposite of these two current songs right now. So, yeah, these lists will really change. If we got artists that are kind of in contention right now, and this will definitely change a lot. The two artists I can think of that have the three artists that I can think of who have the best shot currently at best musician / artist I'll listen to in 2025. The three I can think of currently right now would be it's kind of a battle right at the moment between Cocteau Twins, Susumu Hirasawa, and Maria Takeuchi. Maria and Susumu are both from Japan. I notice my shift in music taste has been gradually pushing over to that country. I have a general appreciation for a lot of the musicians and artists who come from that country, no matter if it's rock or folk or pop music, especially pop music. J-pop from Japan, just there's something that I just like gravitated around it a lot more than I do like US pop music or just pop music from the West. I may have to explain that later down the line, but I don't feel like it's really important to elaborate on now. Maria covers more of the pop side of things, and that's because I'm working through her discography up to her most recent album, Precious Days, which was released last year. I am looking forward to listening to it. I don't think it's going to be mind-blowing, but she's always been more of a consistent artist than, like, you could just a sheer standout hit. I don't anticipate that she's going to have, like, a mind-blowing album in late career, but you never know. I've still got a couple albums of hers left to cover that I have not listened to in her studio discog. Those ones, of course, being longtime favorites, which is more or less a covers album, I think, Trad, and then Precious Days. So that's 3 albums there. And the albums of hers I've listened to this year so far are University Street Beginning and Bon Appetit, which fills in the holes for all the albums that I've already listened to so far between 1978 and 2000, I believe. So we just got another 20 years to cover, which shouldn't take that long. In all due honesty, I should be able to quickly go through that. In the past, I would maybe listen to 2 albums tops by an artist in any of the previous lists. Some rare years, there'd be like 3 or 4. But I've just started been like saying, screw that approach. Just try to dig as deep in as possible. That's only a process I opted more into last year, and I think it's going to be a very similar approach this year, because I'm going to be probably filling in the gaps for the early discography of Susumu Hirasawa. So far, the albums I've listened to, at the worst, they're still like decent or solid. I've listened to his first 2 albums, and then Techniques for Relief, which is carrying that standing really hard. As of right now, on average, Susumu's only doing slightly better than Maria because of that Techniques for Relief album. Everything else has been, it's like, you can kind of see him working through his creative juices on those first 2 albums, and starting to build up to something meaningful. Those are the artists so far. Oh, and yeah, Cocteau Twins, I think, currently has the lead right now. That's just solely judging off the fact that, like, it's closer than I think, actually. It's closer. Again, it's like a 3-way race, because the first album, Garlands, by Cocteau Twins, is solid. Not everything appeals to me on that one. And we're starting to work their way up on like Head Over Heels. But Victoria Land is what's been really carrying that ranking. It's a very atmospheric, dreamy, beautiful ambient, like pop album. Oh, that's right. I forgot about Milk and Kisses. Okay, so I did, as it turned out, completed a majority of the Cocteau Twins discography. That really only leaves the collaborative album between them and I believe it's Harold Budd. Or Brian Eno, one of those 2. That's like the last one left, which could increase their standing even more. They've got an early lead. Who knows if it'll stay that way? It's very possible that some other artist will blow them out of the water. That's always the possibility. It's very possible that they just might hold on to it the entire year. That's what Bob Dylan did on my artist list last year. It's like stuck it out just enough. Almost lost to the runner-up. But yeah, Bob Dylan was able to hold out. I mean, he is... It's a coincidence that I listened to a lot of Bob Dylan the exact year that, like, Complete Unknown came out in movie theaters, which is a great segue because it gives me the opportunity to talk a little bit about film. Just a little bit, not much. For those of you who know, there is going to be an awards ceremony, actually, coming up in about a month or so. The Academy Awards. A little over a month or so. Like 5 weeks. That's coming up soon. The Academy Awards. This is the 97th ceremony. Pretty hard to believe, I know. It's crazy. It's truly crazy. And, yeah. A complete unknown. The movie I mentioned earlier, which is about Bob Dylan, has got quite a number of nominations on the nominations list. The nominations for the Academy Awards, they dropped this week, I think. It was a weird nominations, broadcast. They didn't have all the names for the nominees on some of these. It was just nominees to be determined for Best Picture, which is just a little crazy. How is it that they didn't have that, in there? Hardly at all. I can tell you a couple of things from a surface point about the Academy Awards. This nomination season has been upsetting a couple of people, and with good reason. A lot of people have been just getting absolutely upset about the mass amount of nominations given particularly to Amelia Perez. I might try to see why that's the case. As a person who knows the reality of award ceremonies, I should care, but I kind of really don't, because the credibility of award ceremonies kind of means zilch. When you're the one who personally will cater to your own tastes and, you don't need to listen to a bunch of old white guys. Coming from the 20-something white guy. We may get into that a little bit later. But my point stands. You do not have to care if they give way too many wins to Amelia Perez. If you're a movie buff, yeah, you should probably care. You should probably care about that. I think what upsets people way more is that Amelia Perez has way more wins than another film, which may or may not prove that the Academy actively ignores Denis Villeneuve, which is the lack of nominations that Dune Part 2 has. It's kind of crazy. Dune Part 2 got snubbed big time, and it's a constant reminder that you can be all the rage in one set of, in one season, and then the next season rolls around and the folks have moved on. I don't want to play with you. I'm not playing with you anymore. That meme comes up that movie line comes up all the time as a metaphor for what happened to Dune Part 2. I think it should have gotten a couple more nominations, maybe? If you wanted to give a nomination to anybody that should have been in there, and this is just my personal opinion, I honestly think that there should have at least been one. And this would have been the much more deserving place for Austin Butler to be, where I just did not really believe his performance. It just wasn't good enough on the Elvis Presley film. His performance in the supporting role of Dune Part 2 is it feels real. It's it actually there's a lot going on there. At least that's what I personally think. And another thing to be said is that Dune just missed out on a whole bunch of techies. They should have gotten way more techies than what they got. the only ones that they really picked up on were like cinematography, sound, and production design, and they probably should have had some for editing and costume design and hairstyling. They got screwed out big time because of that. I mean, they were in visual effects, but like there should have been a lot more technical awards lined up for Dune Part 2. But again, as you may notice, the audience demographic from the Academy just kind of betrayed the Dune pretty significantly, especially considering that a lot of where Dune would have landed was split between Emilia Perez or Wicked. And I can't believe I'm saying it, but Wicked is not the problem in this situation. Not mostly the problem. There are a couple nominations where I'm like, maybe not so much. I have my feelings about Wicked showing up, especially because it's a part 1, part 2 situation again. These films doing part 1s and part 2s is just doesn't sit right with me. I would rather it be a full thing. I understand that it's just like sometimes there's no way out of that, and you just kind of, again, I'd be contradictory because Dune has to kind of follow that format. But nobody wants to watch like a 6-hour film. That's one of the problems you run into. And a book like Dune, in order to be properly like adapted into film, would have had to have been like a 6 to 8 hour 6 to 8 hour film, and nobody in the film industry does like a full like length films that are gargantuan monoliths anymore. I mean, the only person who would have had the cojones to pull that off would be like CC DeMille, who used to do these gargantuan films back in the 50s. One example that comes to mind is The Ten Commandments, a film that is like 4+ hours. It's incredible. And personally, I think I know who to blame for the part 1, part 2 film thing. J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter, this is your fault. Look what you started. Somehow that's not the worst culprit of like how uninspiring the film industry is nowadays. And somehow Emilia Perez is also not the most uninspiring thing about the film industry nowadays. That still goes to the superhero film genre just completely running into the ground. They have totally just crashed the superhero film genre is like a rich spoiled kid crashing their daddy's car. They've had it for way too long, went on a road trip, did a bunch of drugs, and now their car got totaled on the highway after going for a thrill ride, and it's all over. The superhero genre needs to take a big old breather for a while. It needs to sit back. We need no films from the superhero genre. It's kind of just like saturated cinema to the point where it's like, oh man, what options are there at your local cinema if that's the only stuff that's left? And the awards shows, like, they'll pick things that aren't always available in your local theater. If you're lucky, you might live in a major city and then you'll have more like cultural options. But like, again, it's just there's less options, and then you're forced to travel to film festivals, and not all of us have the money for that. It's like there's only so many options. It's not exactly exciting to go to the theater. If I had known that Dune was going to be exciting, I probably would have watched it in theaters, and I'm going to have the luxury to give an opinion on that at some point or another. Because for Christmas, I got the Blu-ray for Dune, both parts, mind you, both parts, so that I can actually speak my mind on that. So that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I watched the first part on an airplane trip, and it surprisingly helped me get through the entirety of that airplane flight. It was so worth it. Bless the airlines industry for having the ability to watch movies for free on the flight, because I could not play video games that whole way there. There was no way I was going to be able to pull that off. We'll talk a little bit about the nominations, because there are some that I am interested in Dune Part 2 did still get included in the Best Picture conversation. It's going to be very contentious for some people. For some reason, they just did not provide enough lists for the producers of the picture, which is truly crazy. I'm starting to think, and just because I know that populist bias does sometimes play a bit of a role in the Academy, there's an insane part of me that's going to think they're really going to be out to upset the people. Specifically between Emilia Perez and Wicked, neither of which are original properties by any means of the word. If we're looking for something that, the topical matter of Emilia Perez is not what I have an issue with. There's other issues that I can't cover that tonight because we'd be talking forever. And Wicked has already been like a fantastic musical. It did not need to be a movie. That's just me. I'll probably still wind up watching it anyways because my parents are going to be like, yeah, we want to watch a film, like a movie while you're home. And it's like, oh, you should watch Wicked. I'm like, I mean, what am I going to do? Say no to my parents? I'm not going to say no to my parents because I love them and I care. I want to show that I care. That's the biggest thing. It's just like sometimes you do things you don't want to do, but that's because you're doing things for people that you care for. And that's the big thing here. If it were me, probably like a throw-up toss between, I don't know, probably The Brutalist, I'm Still Here, or Nickel Boys. Maybe The Substance. One of those four winning wouldn't bother me whatsoever. Best Director. There's a brand new list of people that I don't think any of them have ever won Best Director. So for the first year, we're going to have a brand new director that wins it. I would say that it's just kind of a similar camp. If it's either, Bray Corbet or Coralie Fargeat, the director of The Substance or the director of The Brutalist. If one of those two wins, it's fine. People will throw a fit if Jacques Audiard wins for Emilia Perez. That will upset a lot of people. Actually, no matter which one, like anything that wins for Emilia Perez, it's going to be, people are going to be like, boo. They're gonna get mad. There's no way around that. Actor categories is where it gets interesting. For Best Actor, I mean, the five that you got here is a pretty good styling of choices. Adrien Brody has already won before in the past. Won for The Pianist, which is a good performance, a very good performance. Still currently the youngest winner of the Best Actor category. Although that could change. That could very possibly change if Timothée Chalamet... Oh, never mind. No, it won't. It will not win. It will not change. It would not change. It would not change. It was close. Here I am thinking that Timothée Chalamet was still younger than Adrien Brody, but he's not. He's 30 right now. And he's nominated for a complete unknown as Bob Dylan. All signs point towards Timothée Chalamet winning this one. Would be too surprising. Not going to get myself all worked up. Coleman Domingo is also on there as for Sing Sing. That could be a very interesting one. I might not be too surprised if Ray Fiennes takes it away. I mean, according to a lot of movie buffs, he's building up steam. He's making a big way up the ladder, and Ray Fiennes would be more or less a legacy pick, even though that performance is good. Sebastian Stan would be a surprise pick. That would be where that would be a wild pick. Actually, both picks for The Apprentice would be quite surprising. Not that I have a problem with either one of them. It's just a very interesting film where the strongest elements, they stick out like quite something, and everything else just kind of is there for the sake of being there. The Best Actress category is where things get very, very, very interesting. it feels like a massive like coin toss between any of these 5. I could not tell you exactly who's going to win. Although I know, just knowing what I know about the Academy crowd, it's probably going to end up falling into the hands of like Cynthia Erivo for Wicked. That would not at all surprise me. I'm pretty sure that's probably what's going to happen. People are going to get get tied up in a knot if Carla Sofia Gascon wins for Amelia Perez. Again, it's just kind of the Amelia Perez, like, people get mad, especially within the like crusty like white movie demographic. You'll see that, or just films in general. Like, it's very possible that we might have a different side of the story later on. Who knows? It'd be interesting to see if Demi Moore or Fernanda Torres won. One of those two would probably be like the most interesting wins, at least in my mind. I don't have much to say about that category. I do have quite a bit more to say about the supporting actress category, because Monica Barbero being thrown in there is like that sort of they like the acting in a complete unknown, so they throw her in. You know, the people are about the same age as Joan Baez, so I guess it's not too surprising that she got thrown into the mix. Again, it's a runner list of big names for the most part. I mean, between Ariana Grande, Felicity Jones, Zoe Saldana, big names here. Again, much like in the Best Actress category, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if the actress category for both supporting and leading was just a Wicked sweep. That could very easily happen, especially because people are raving about like Ariana Grande's performance, and that would be very, very about face. Supporting actor, I get the feeling I know what's going to happen here. Everybody in here had a strong supporting role between Yura Borisov, Kieran Culkin, who is probably going to win. Culkin is probably going to win this one. He's been the leader this whole time on a real pain. Although you never be surprised. You know, it could be literally anything. With the other ones, Edward Norton's always been a consistent nominee, and they might finally give him his flowers. The same goes for Guy Pearce or Jeremy Strong. So you never know what to expect. I think just Jeremy Strong's just happy to be in the nominations field as it is. Those were kind of the ones I wanted to talk about because I really don't have any other strong opinions beyond that. Academy Awards going to be on March 3rd. And I guess that does bring me to one thing that I'm looking forward to. It's going to finally be one of the shows where we get a genuinely good host. Conan O'Brien is taking over the host role for this year's show. So even if it's a total shit show when it comes to awards picks, we have at least somebody who understands how to give good stand-up. Because I'm getting so sick and tired of every year just being taken up by Jimmy Kimmel. It sucks. It's just so bad. And we can finally escape that, even if for just 1 year. Oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to that. I'm happy that Conan O'Brien is getting his time in the sunlight to be the host, because I like his stand-up. I like his style. He's one of my personal favorite, like, late-night show hosts. He does a podcast nowadays. That's pretty cool. I do wish he was still, just like behind the desk. And if we had it our way, and if the timeline was a little bit better, he would be still the host of the Tonight Show. But maybe NBC had their own plans. They wouldn't allow it. They were out for blood. They didn't want him or David Letterman to be up there, and I just wish it was that way. That's just kind of NBC. Showbiz is sometimes just very frustrating sometimes, and you can see why people start going more towards like internet media or just like the online media of the future, where it comes from social media apps, especially like streaming platforms. And YouTube has been this big leading wave still, even to this day, as it becomes one of the major as it maintains its status as one of the major chess pieces on the table. You're going to be seeing the fact that they're going to end up outliving like TikTok should tell you everything you need to know. They've dodged a bullet, and TikTok was just unable to. There's certain misfortune with that too, because I think that's going to have some profound consequences in the future. Not anything that I'm willing to talk about in great detail, but we'll really see the aftermath of that soon enough. And honestly, for what it's worth, there is not too much else for me to say. I guess I can give one brief inclusion. It was one of the other expected graduations from the VTubing community, specifically in Hololive, as Sakamata Chloe had done her final stream with Hololive. JPN-based VTuber, so she was catering primarily towards a Japanese audience. But it was one of those big questions of, was Hololive going to be able to weather the storm that they were going through in management? And it seems like in the long run it's probably going to happen, but there shouldn't be too many surprises if there's like this continued like cycle of growing pains that the company starts to go through in the future, especially with like Cover going public last year. So that's going to have some impact, and hey, look, it is what it is. You deal for what it's worth, and you just wish the people that graduate the best on their future endeavors, because whatever they do next, and who knows under what identity, is going to probably be good, or at least fun for the people that are able to find it. So again, best of luck to them and everybody else who's graduated so far this year. And yeah, it was a brief one. It was really only about an hour and a half long. It was not a very lengthy podcast. I covered maybe a little over an hour. Like I said, it was going to be a short one, and I'll have more fancy overlays eventually. Just going to gradually construct them as I go. Things will be a bit more organized. I might try to switch the topical tab here. Yeah, I don't have too much else to say. And I guess one more thing is deciding how frequently I do these podcasts. They could be as frequent as once a week. I don't think I'll do it more than once a week, but I'm thinking it'll probably be covered once every 2 or so weeks. I'll most likely just run them on Sundays, and yeah, that will be interesting. I'd like to thank everybody for watching the intro episode of the Glass Podcast. There will be the first official episode. It's either going to be next week on February 1st or February 9th. I think it is. That's right. Yeah, February 2nd or February 9th. That's when you can expect the next episode. And I'll be a bit more clear and organized with that one. Who knows? Later into the future, I might start having guest appearances for these episodes. We'll see. I will sort of pick at certain people and see if they are willing to talk the talk, gab the gab, or yap the yap with yours truly. And we'll see where it goes. The podcast is kind of like my own oyster. I can kind of just do whatever I want with it. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. This was Glass Podcast intro episode. I am done for tonight.